In the Sermon by the Sea, our founder, Ernest Holmes, states, "Find me one person who can get his own littleness out of the way, and he shall reveal to me the immeasurable gratitude or the magnitude of the universe in which I live." We've also heard this statement as getting our bloated nothingness out of the way. This year in our spiritual center, we're revisiting the Sermon by the Sea, which was a lesson given by our founder at a Seelemire prior to his passing. The statement about our littleness is the focus for this month, for March. As most of you know, I recently returned from Kenya. Terry Lurch and I both went there. She's gone on to some more magnificent travels. But it was part fun, part church conference, and part volunteering. One place we visited was the Hamrabi for Kenya, or the Naiko Safe House. And so you fully understand what the safe house was. I want to show you a few pictures so that you can visualize what I'm going to talk about today, and so that you have a greater understanding of what we saw and what we did and what we experienced that day. So I'm going to step aside so I'm not in the way of anybody. And now you understand why I had a trouble saying that. Harambee or Haramba for Kenya, Nakoiko, a safe house. The next picture, this is the dorm where 32 young men between the ages of 4 and 21, 22 years of age live. This is where they do all of their cooking, and the boys are expected to assist in that process of cooking. Everything is done outside over an open fire. This is the space in which their shoes are all kept. They're not allowed to go into their bedrooms with the shoes on because there where we were in Kenya, it's all red mud. And this just gives you a concept of what the dorm is like, the hallway that goes into the various rooms. And these are the individual lockers that the boys have to be able to keep their possessions. I want you to note that those lockers are about 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet, and they keep all of their possessions in those lockers. This is a typical dorm room. Note the mosquito netting that's located around it so that they don't get bitten. And at nighttime, go ahead and change. At nighttime, the boys have to use kerosene because there's no electricity in the facility to be able to study at night. This is their shower. It's basically just a pipe that comes out of the wall and shoots the water out on it. I don't even think that there's a hot or a cold on either side of it. And while we were there, Connie, who is the one in the center, we delivered to them an embroidery sewing machine as well as a knitting machine. One of the things that they're really emphatic about is that the boys get their education as well as learn a skill that they can do. The gentleman on the left is the director of the facility. The program is sponsored by a nonprofit in the United Kingdom, and he accepts no salary. He lives on his retirement. He's already retired from another job that he had. These are some of the boys. You can go ahead and switch it. These are some of the boys that we worked with that day, or that we played with, we ate with, we talked with, we just thoroughly enjoyed. And the last slide shows you in their craft room, the greatest gift ever given to man is love. Can you tell I was touched? The boys created their own intentions for living at the Safe House, and they posted them on the wall, and there were a total of 18 of them, and they all participated regardless of how old they were. They all participated in the process of creating those intentions, and they were in handwriting, and once they completed them, they each signed off on them, and they were posted on the wall. I took a picture of them, and there were 4 of those that I'm going to focus the four intentions that I'm going to focus on today. The first is, remember your background should be a motivating factor and it should inspire you. Remember that these 32 boys and young men were rejects. They were abandoned by their families. They were runaways because of abuse, or they were discards because they were an inconvenience or a burden to their families. These boys and young men learned at an early age that their past does not determine their future. Just imagine what their life was like before they came to the safe house. They had to fight and to beg for the food and the belongings that they would dig up out of the dump or in the sewers or on the streets. There was no such thing for any of these boys as school. They were too busy trying to survive. In fact, the 4-year-old originally came to the facility when he was only 3. His mother remarried, and the new husband said, "I'll take you, but I won't take your son. Get rid of him." And so she passed him off to her mother, and her mother was too old or too elderly to take care of him. And so she just pushed him out of the house. By the time the director got him and took him to the hospital, the doctor indicated he was 2 days away from death. He's now 4 years old and doing fine. Some of them endured emotional, physical, mental, sexual pain, and in doing so, they sniffed glue to be able to deal with that pain. But now that they know that pain can define their past, they realize that it does not shape their future. Before you found Science of Mind, before you walked through the door here, what was your life like? Some of you may have entered the doors here in despair for a variety of reasons. Maybe you were hungry, and I'm not talking about physical hunger. I'm talking about the hunger, the yearning for a spiritual connection, for spiritual depth. Hopefully, why you came was nothing as drastic or as painful as these 32 boys or the boys before them experienced. Some of you may have memories that you hope would go away and that nobody else finds out. Or maybe there were things that you used that you no longer do because of your spiritual connection here, like drugs or alcohol. What did you do that you no longer do? Maybe you used words that were demeaning to yourself or others, or maybe you stole or were a bully to somebody else, or were unable to forgive someone that you needed to let go of. What did you say that you no longer say? Maybe besides judging yourself and judging others, you could finally find something that was positive about yourself and others. Ephesians 4:22 through 24 says, "Lay aside all your former practices and be renewed in the spirit of your mind and put on the new man or woman who is created by God." Just like the boys from the safe house, we need to make peace with our past. We need to continually work on ourselves so that our past doesn't get in our way of moving forward. We need to put on a new me. I recently read an interview with Lauren Powell Jobs. It was Steve Jobs' wife. She's a multi-billionaire. And she said, "We don't have to accept the world we're born into as something that is fixed and impermeable. There is nothing that is permanent in our lives. We can change anything with a new focus and a personal intention." There's an old Tibetan myth that helps people to accept their pain and their sadness as the threshold to all that life is changing and lasting. It affirms that all spiritual warriors have a broken heart. In fact, they must have a broken heart, because it is only through the break that the wonders and the beauty of life can enter us, so we might see the magnitude of the universe that Ernest Holmes talked about. Our heartaches and our past challenges may not be as great as the boys at the safe house, They can, however, be learned from and released so that that lasting change can happen in our life. The second intention the boys created was your blessings are countless. The blessings these boys were endless when compared with their previous lives. 3 meals a day, clean clothing, a bed, a real mattress to sleep on, an education that was paid for, supportive and loving and caring adults. The list for these kids was absolutely endless. The safe house for them was like living in a palace. Ernest Holmes states we must not only believe, we must know that our belief measures the extent and the degree of our blessings. If our belief is limited, only a little can come to us because that is as we believe. We know that Ernest Holmes is talking about mental equivalent. And just what is mental equivalent? It is creating in our life something greater by visioning, by setting intentions, by praying and then believing that we can demonstrate our new concept. Every time God blesses us, it's a gift of grace. And we are blessed each and every day of our life, even if we don't realize it. The word bless or blessing is so important that it's included in the Old Testament alone over 400 times. God blesses everyone. As we bless others, so are we blessed. It's like gratitude, you know. The more we express and give thanks for something and what is in our life, the more we attract into it. It's the old cause and effect principle. St. Francis said it in his famous prayer, it is in the giving that we receive, and certainly in the blessings we receive. Max Lucado once said gratitude lifts our eyes off the things we lack so we might see the blessings we possess. When we bless others, our life is likewise blessed. We all want to be blessed. The question for each of us to answer, however, is what do we do with our blessings and how do we bless others? The next intention the boys created was to be mindful of others and be our brother's keeper. That's where today's title came from of the lesson. I can't even imagine living in a dump or on the streets like these boys did prior to being given or taken to the safe house. They had to fend for themselves and protect what little they had. Even when they arrived, some would leave because there were rules that they had to live by, and they didn't want to live by those rules. They wanted to continue to sniff glue. They didn't want to be in by a certain hour or by a certain time. It was easier to be free to use those drugs or to do what they wanted to do rather than to go to school. Many had never even been to school. And so starting to learn that process at 10, 11, 12 was really not easy. It was a challenge for them. I might add that we're currently sponsoring 5 boys in high school and 4 young men in college, just because of this program. Being my brother's keeper is first mentioned in Genesis after God asked Cain where his brother Abel was. Of course, we all know that Cain killed Abel out of jealousy and frustration and anger and responded to God with a very flippant comment or response. What am I, my brother's keeper? There are 3 key words in this intention. They are mindful, brother, and keeper. Mindful means being conscious or aware of others. Also, it means being focused in the moment. Keeper. The idea of keeper is to guard, to watch, protect, and oversee. And the word brother, that gets a little bit harder for us, and because we typically think of brothers as blood relatives. But for the boys at the safe house, it takes on a whole different meaning. It means being a hand to hold, a shoulder to lean on, an ear to listen. Being a brother there at the safe house means building and breaking bridges together, celebrating small and large victories and mourning their losses. Being a brother for these young men who are not related all comes down to compassion, caring, kindness, and understanding of what they've gone through. All things they normally did not experience that on the street. So when we look at these three elements of mindful, keeper, and brother, there is much for us to learn and understand. So often we are not necessarily in a conscious state of mind. It's easy for us to be oblivious to the needs of others since we get so caught up in our own needs, our own wants. To me, being mindful is being present for the other person when they're experiencing a challenge. It's about being aware of their feelings. It's about truly listening rather than thinking ahead of what am I going to respond? What am I going to say? What am I going to share so the focus comes back on me? For these young men, keeper means so much more than guarding and protecting. It means a willingness to share what little they have. It means each one teaches one. The skills they learned are to be shared so that survival becomes easier. It means sharing responsibilities even when you don't like the task you have been given. We here in America are so fortunate. When I was in Kenya, I saw poverty that makes our slums look like the land of plenty. These boys know poverty at a level you and I can never even begin to conceive of. And so they become keepers for each other, supporting each other so that they will all succeed. One of their intentions, which I'll talk about at a later date in another lesson, was successful people look like you. Imagine that for an intention from young children. And in their helping and supporting each other, they share in their successes. Indeed, we are one with our brothers and sisters. There is no separation between you and me, the people you're sitting next to, those in this room, or the lady in the shopping line. Chico and beyond has many opportunities for each of us to be mindful and to be our brother's keeper. Maybe you could deliver meals on wheels. Or how about be a child or a senior advocate? Serve a meal at the Tories or Jesus Center, or become involved in the literacy programs through our libraries. There is so much we can do and be for each other. There is so many ways to be the keepers of our brothers and sisters. As we are blessed, so we must bless. The last intention I want to share today is love is the greatest gift we are given by God, so why don't you always give it freely? It was the last intention listed. As I reread this intention, I was stunned by the maturity of these young men and boys. In this statement, they are calling each other to give love freely, unconditionally. In one of Mark Nepo's books, he states, unconditional love is not so much about how we receive and endure each other, as it is about a deep vow to never, under any condition, stop bringing the flawed truth of who we are to each other. Unconditional love is not about turning the other cheek. It doesn't mean I stop loving you because of your behavior. What it does mean, however, is that we stay committed to bringing all of who we are to each and every one of our relationships. It means being honest with each other about who we are. Unconditional love means we love regardless of what is happening, regardless of the conditions. We live in a society today that teaches us to look out for number one, me, baby, me. We love to show kindness and generosity when it fits our schedule, when it's convenient, when it's easy. If there's a fundraiser like a golf tournament or if the company we're working for or our friends are going to help build a house for Habitat for Humanity, we might get involved. But sometimes we don't like to get involved when it's inconvenience for us or when it's uncomfortable. And normally the times we need to show love the most are the times when things are messy. Like a divorce. A husband and wife are going through a divorce, and even though neither one really totally understands the reason why they're doing it, they do it anyway. And either one or both of them may turn to us. And what do? We can either avoid them because it makes us feel uncomfortable and we can judge them and walk completely away from them. Or we can show them unconditional love, never justifying what they did or trying to ignore the wrongs that were done to each other. We need to love regardless of what happened and be their friend. We need to love regardless of culture. Far too often, we live in that place of prejudice. We're biased. We are against others because of their race, because of their skin color, their gender preference, or a multitude, or who they're voting for. Oh, God. I am so sick of the arguments on Facebook. Sorry, that wasn't in the lesson. Love them! We need to love regardless of our comfort zones. How easy it is for us to step out of our comfort zone to show love to others. We need to love continually. When we choose to consistently love others, it will make a profound impact on their lives as well as our own. Remember, what you put out is what comes back. Many of the experiences I had in Kenya were absolutely incredible. Seeing the baby elephants that were saved because their mothers were shot for their ivory, being kissed by a giraffe, or watching the sunset behind a herd of zebras on the mesa. Attending our first Centers for Spiritual Living conference in Kenya with about 60 Kenyans who were new to our spirituality. They were eager to learn, and it was so exciting to watch them. They wanted to know spirit within. They wanted to know spirit in a new way. Or the night that we danced with the Swahili warriors. All of those are experiences I'll never, ever forget. What profoundly affected me, however, were the opportunities to visit and volunteer with the young people of Kenya in the school that we helped to sponsor next to a slum, next to an area that these children would never be able to get out of, and we're making it possible. At the safe house for the boys, or with children as young as 2.5 through teenagers who are HIV positive. 29% of the children in Kenya are HIV positive. All of those experiences left me broken and open to a new understanding of releasing the past, unconditional love, blessings, and being my brother's and my sister's keeper. Indeed, this experience forced me to become intimate with my own bloated nothingness and the greatness of the people of Kenya who have overcome so much in order to build a better life on a foundation of their oneness with God. I am grateful for this incredible journey. I am blessed beyond measure. This is the truth in my life, and this is the truth in yours. And so it is. Amen.